Hello. So, for those of y'all that don't know, I work for Southern Oregon Coalition for Racial Equity. We are a racial equity group in the state of Oregon. Yep, more specifically, Southern Oregon, because we are a relatively new organization. We've only been active for a year. Um, so right now I'm on our website, soequity.org, and right now I'm trying to bring up the blog because I'm the one that writes it. Recently, I noticed that one of my videos got, or TikToks got, over 2,000 views. And it's the one where I talk about the fact that I went to a women's march. And during one of the live streams, I was getting called racial slurs in the comment section. And so the comments were interesting because for the black women that were commenting, they were like, I thought we all agreed that we were going to sit this one out. And trust me, I understand why you're saying that. I absolutely do. I'm from Baltimore City, Maryland. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood for half my life until I came to Oregon. Some of the other comments were funnier because they were all like, first of all, why are you in Oregon? And I'm like, the reason you're asking that is the reason that I went to the march in the first place is because you know that a state like Oregon is very, very white. It's like that for a reason. So, going to a women's march in a very white state while black, why did I do that? And I get it, you know. Black women are like, white women have not stood in solidarity with us. History has confirmed this. There has been an increase in white women voting for Trump. I get that. I do. But understand something. Oregon is so white. And the racism here is, I gotta say, it's is bad. And the only thing that I'm really trying to get across here is for the white activists that had the women's march, they're not going to understand why black women would say, I'm going to sit this one out. They're not going to understand why. And I was like one of the people in the comment section pointed out, I was the only black woman at the march. So it was up to me to tell these people why. Why would we want to stay away? What is the history behind the women's suffragist movements and how white women told Ida B. Wells to go to the back of the parade? Like, yeah, they're not going to understand the context of why. So, bless you. It was the it was the only way that I could get them to listen. Like, you thought that this was going to be just a women's march and you're going to center whiteness. No, if you invited me, because I didn't ask, y'all invited me to speak. So, with that being said, because I was invited to speak, I absolutely talked about why black women wouldn't want to be a part of the march. I also said in the speech verbatim that um, The Handmaid's Tale is fiction, but American history is real. And so I started to tell them about the hysterectomies that went on, but they were disguised as gallbladder removals. Um, a lot of black women experienced that in the 70s, I believe. And, you know, that's something that we don't talk about in in American classrooms anyway. And someone here said times are different. Why not join? I'll tell you why. Because when it comes to issues that affect black women and women of color at a higher rate than white women will center whiteness. That's why. Um, so when it comes to bodily autonomy, also within the speech, I said that I know that we're here because we're against what Texas is doing, but I need people in Oregon to look at what Oregon is doing. I mean, y'all have a history of black exclusionary laws. Quite a few sundown towns exist here in Oregon because of y'all's history. And also Oregon has a history of eugenics. Period. With people with disabilities. So maybe let's do a self-reflection of the state that we're currently in. And I said this is a call to action, you know? If you're going to say that you're an ally, here's what I need you to do. The information that you learned here, why isn't it taught in your classrooms? I think after you leave the streets today, you need to attend school board meetings and city council meetings. That's where you need to be. If you're going to be an ally, this is what I need you to do, is to raise awareness. Why don't you know more information about Oregon's racial history? Why don't you teach that in your classrooms? I feel like if you made strides toward being a more racially inclusive place, you would be proud of the history of how you did it. Personally, I think that the reason why there's a strong opposition here in Oregon is because if we were to actually look at the so called progress Oregon has made race wise, we would see that not much progress has happened. So, for my black women that are watching this, I don't know how many are out there. Um, I went to the Women's March October 2nd because otherwise they're not going to know that part of history or talk about it or bring it up or know to bring it up. I had to say something. And so I did. I did. Okay, this is weird. Here's what I want to know. Um and this is part of the reason why we distance ourselves from movements is because of what's going on right now in the comment section right here. If y'all are paying attention, there is a person named Johnny Jackie 123. And he's in the comments talking about some, well, I will do fine. I have stockpile food, guns, and ammunition. America's going to shit. This is a conversation about women's bodily autonomy. Calm down. Also, it does not matter how much bullets and your bodily autonomy is safe, sir. It always has been. And also, it's not even about you. It does not matter how much you have stockpiled. You will literally never have enough. And the more food and bullets that you have on your person during the apocalypse, you might as well just draw a fucking target on your back, shit face. Why are you bragging about how many resources you have on the internet? Like that's telling the whole world, hey, if things go to shit, let's rob that fucker. Well, don't tell them. I don't know if y'all heard that, but that's my roommate. Anyway, focus on you. No. Anyways, all right. Matthew Effin Scott. Out of curiosity, how did that stuff go over at the march? Actually, it was well received. There was only one person there where I'm kind of wary about, and I don't want to. It's not particularly bad. It's just that there was this one guy at the march, and he was receiving the information very well. It was just something that he said after the march that was a little off-putting to me. So he said that he couldn't wait until the next one, and the next one he's going to wear his rainbow kilt. Personally, I don't find anything wrong with a rainbow kilt. It's just that protests and marches, they're not supposed to be a fun afternoon activity. Like, why are you excited about the next one? I feel like I said earlier in one of the two speeches that I gave that if you call yourself an ally or you want to be a better ally, then where you need to be is at the school board meetings where they're talking about what's going to be taught in the curriculum and in city hall meetings where you need to hold local officials accountable. Why would I want to go to another march or protest? I feel like that's not how real work gets done. It's not supposed to be an adventure. People can be excited about protests. Honey, wait a minute, let me take a good look. Dr. Schumer Beal, yeah, you're a white woman. So let me tell you something. Um have you ever gone to a pride parade? You see how it's all colorful and stuff? Not the first one. The first one, it was a freaking bloody mess. See, the first one where Marsha P. Johnson was at, um, there were cops involved in shit. Bricks were being thrown. It wasn't always happy go lucky. Yes, we're here, we're queer, and we're not going in. It wasn't always like that. People lost their lives. People got arrested. Hell, it was usually riots up until like what, the last 20 years? You might as well be. You're a very light skinned one then. Indian as in from India. Well, then, since you were not here at the time that all of this occurred, yes, here in America, we're exterminating people. Protesting is supposed to be about spreading the word, raising awareness about an issue, and then bringing forth actual change after it's over. It's not supposed to be a fun activity. Exactly, exactly. Hi, Queen. How are you? I'm doing all right, you know. Um, the TikTok that I created talking about getting called racial slurs in the live stream that we did of the Women's March on October 2nd. Quite a few other fellow sisters was like, why you go to that? Why do you live in Oregon? I thought we was staying out of that. This is that conversation. I'm telling y'all that if I did not go, they wouldn't know about Mary Church Terrell. They wouldn't know about Ida B. Wells. They would not know why we would want to stay away after that. And plus, I went to high school here in Oregon. So I went to South Medford High School, and the only information that was given when we were going through um, the portion of history about women's suffrage is we watched Iron Jawed Angels. There was no mention of Ida B. Wells except for that movie. Do we understand the problem with that? So if I didn't go, it wasn't going to get discussed. It was more of an obligation, really. I understand why black women across the states that actually have a decent black population would want to stay out of um, white centered marches. But if I didn't go, then it was going to be a white centered march. Like that's how bad it is here in Oregon. Is that if we don't speak up, the very few black people that live here about why certain things are happening, then white allies are never going to understand or make a difference. Is we have to speak up. You want to know how we get to racial equity? Well, you're looking at her. There's not a lot of us here in Southern Oregon, but like let me really put it into perspective for all of you. Last summer was the very first Juneteenth celebration in the sundown town of Medford, Oregon, where I live. The first. When I say that Oregon needs work, Oregon needs work. Not only did I, attend the Women's March, give speeches, tell white folks why black women feel some type of way about it, um, I also showed up with my Black Heritage flag. Sure did. And as, is expected, a lot of people were asking me, what is this flag? Sometimes you just have to lead by example. Otherwise, don't shit ain't never gonna get done. Oh no, I have nothing personal against people from India. It's just that if you immigrated to this country and you don't understand why protests are not supposed to be a fun activity, it's like I have nothing against that. It's just that you spoke from a place of ignorance. It's that protests here in this country have been all out bloody. It wasn't always rainbows and sunshine and selfies. Oh, brother. It's like I feel like every single time I write the word black, there's a white man that always has to come up in my comment section. It's like if I was talking about being at a women's march while black. Why did you have to bring up Black Lives Matter? We're talking about two different movements. No, I don't have the privilege to be excited about protests. Protests are not a fun activity. How about instead of never mind. It's just like you was going ham in the comments. I'm sorry, but it's like I would have to sit here and explain what it's like to be black in America in order to get you to understand why protesting isn't supposed to be fucking exciting. Protesting itself does not is not the cure all for medical racism. And honestly, the other reason I went to that women's march in the first place is because a white doctor here in Oregon almost killed my ass. I went to a women's clinic, not Planned Parenthood. I went to a women's clinic so that I could get the IUD. And for those of y'all that don't know the history of the IUD, look it up. Anyways, so um, for me, I have to be on birth control in order to regulate my cycle. If I do not, I will bleed nonstop. It will not stop. I have to have birth control. So that's the reason why I went. Originally, the provider, she inserted the IUD and the instrument that she used to insert the IUD with. When she went to remove it, the sticky string got caught on said instrument and then she yanked out my IUD. That is what happened. It was a couple years ago. Then she inserted a different IUD. And then about a week or so later, I was in the hospital with sepsis. I was in the hospital for 9 days. Could not see my son for those 9 days. And then I had to get a PICC line inserted into my arm. And a PICC line is a catheter that goes from the arm all the way to the top of the heart. So I had that in for 2 weeks afterwards so that I could inject myself with cefazolin to make sure that my blood was cleared out. That's why I went to that women's march. Because medical racism is still so prevalent, and had I died, nobody would have gave a damn. Nobody would have known. Nobody would have marched out in the streets. In order for, and this is why we talk, black people, I mean, when I say we, when we talk about the white gaze, we're not talking about the white gaze. No, we're talking about the white gaze. And when we talk about that, this is the kind of thing that we're talking about. In order for you to give somewhat of a damn, you have to see a black man get killed on camera on national television in order for you to start to care about black bodies hitting the floor. It's not enough of a shock to you um, for black women or women of color dying at the hands of a white provider. It's just not. It's just not. So that's why. That's why I don't have the luxury of being so excited about, yes, the next protest. Let's go, Queens. No, I don't. It's so infuriating. Anyways, um, okay, again, again, Northern underscore living 1961. Let me ask you something. What was the reason you came to a black woman's live stream and said, Biden just took money from black colleges that Trump put in? You proud of Biden? We're not even talking about none of that. It's because literally all they have are talking points. That's literally all they have, Dom, is talking points. Education is absolutely needed. Yep. I had to Google it, unfortunately, from Ottawa. Am I pronouncing that correctly? So you live in Canada, so you had to Google it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's the unfortunate part is that um and this is what I mean. When I read the book How the Irish Became White, it let me know that when immigrants come to this country, here is a daring question. How do they automatically know the place of the Negro? How do they know the Negro's place? Like, what is this unspoken contract where you know that black is the lowest of the low, and somewhere in the middle of this caste system is where you fit above blackness? How does that conversation even happen? So it doesn't surprise me that people not from America wouldn't know the in-depth history of what happened to black people, because it's not like it gets talked about in white classrooms. So I wouldn't expect immigrants to know verbatim what the hell happened. I'm half Indian, half Kenyan, and I want to learn about the underbelly of racism here. Logical underscore warrior. Well, where to start? Um, a lot. How do I say this? Living in Baltimore City, Maryland, I had the greatest opportunity to appreciate blackness because in elementary school, I was learning about Kwanzaa. In elementary school, I was learning about Ida B. Wells. Um, I was learning about Mary Church Terrell. I was learning about Harriet Tubman, especially because I lived in Maryland, and I I appreciate the fact that I had the opportunity to see black excellence centered in my education. However, moving to a predominantly white area, That was not the case. You get about 5 minutes on slavery was bad. You watch Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uh, the teacher reads the book, and you just sit there and listen. And then you learn that Dr. King cured racism by going to sleep. That's how it is in white classrooms when talking about racism and slavery. Is that it's so sad, and I really wish I wasn't exaggerating, but there is no black visibility. That's the best way that I can say it without it sounding like an exaggeration, is that there is no black excellence visibility. That the only thing that the average white Oregonian experiences when it comes to black people and black culture would be, I mean, Django Unchained is still relatively recent. I mean, I'm talking about black sitcoms. That's about when they're looking at black sitcoms, that is their entire experience of black people. Pakistan, India, maybe do some research, see whose protests were worse, Stonewall or ours. Okay, let me get this straight. You want to play oppression Olympics? This is not the place for you to do so. Juneteenth, bunch of BS. We still need sovereignty, not a day. Exactly. Exactly. Because, gonna be honest, the Juneteenth that happened in Medford was not the first Juneteenth that I've been to. It's just that if I wanted to go to a Juneteenth, before, the federal law happened, I guess, I had to go to a predominantly black area in order to celebrate it. And some years it wasn't always that easy to do so. It takes money to do that. But that's just it. Is that after that, what little black community that we have out here, we're trying to establish opportunities for um, the rest of the white population to learn something that didn't have anything to do with a black sitcom when talking about black culture or black people. And it's difficult. It really is. Because we are putting in so much work in educating. It's like, why can't the school board do the same? That way we wouldn't have to work as hard on teaching white people the basics. This is the basics. Do you really think that they have read Langston Hughes at all? Like, it's so baffling, and I'm just bursting at the seams about it that they just don't know. And I know that I've brought this up in basically all of the lives that I've been in, but let me tell you something. I did a book discussion on Uncle Tom's Cabin. And I did that because Uncle Tom's Cabin was a book that was read in middle school when I went to middle school here in Oregon. And the reason I did that was because I wanted to tell white people that this is not an accurate view of what slavery was. Why are you more comfortable learning about slavery through a white author? History is not supposed to be comfortable. History is history, good or bad. It's about telling the truth. And the biggest question is, what is the reason that you're avoiding looking at black authors that talk about their experience with slavery? So during that book discussion, I brought up Um, Harriet Jacobs, the author of uh, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl. Those are her experiences. Don't you think that she would be better suited for a classroom if you're going to learn about slavery? Why not learn from someone who was previously enslaved instead of a white woman that was just talking about it from the outside looking in perspective? What good does that do? And honestly, um, the point that I really drove home when I did do the book discussion, I said, take a look at these photos. These are blackface minstrel shows of the characters from Uncle Tom's Cabin. This is supposed to be an anti slavery novel. And what did American society do with it? They profited off of blackface minstrelsy. So, what was the original plot of the movie? Why'd you do that? The entire point of stereotypes, blackface minstrel shows, derogatory um, things that are anti black, the entire point of that is to dehumanize black people. The more we are dehumanized, the easier it is for you to sit comfortable and watch black people get murdered in the streets, to be perfectly honest with you. That's why when, a black person is talking about their experience with racism, the very first thing that white people like to say is, another victim. That victim mentality. It's like you mad because I'm talking about people that look like you that are doing this shit and still doing it. Newburgh, Oregon. Newburgh, Oregon. This place. So recently, there was this whole news story about the white kids that went to this school in Newburgh, Oregon, and they had literal online slave auctions of the few black kids that went to their school. You can't make this shit up. That's Oregon. I know you only heard about Newburgh, but no, that's Oregon. Whatever shit you heard about Portland, Oregon, and oh, it's just a white liberal safe haven, the fuck it is. Don't you feel that white liberals are condescending to POC? Absolutely, without a doubt. Hmm. Immensely. Okay, so Monty Love 860. Waste of time, love, don't do it. And that's just it though. I can't. Here's the thing. Going to school here, seeing the lack of black excellence visibility within the classrooms compared to going to school in my hometown, I got to say something. That and my son is 4. I will absolutely have no problem teaching him about black excellence, telling him all of the stories that I know. I mean, for example, this is one of the books that I recently got. It's called The Joy of Being a Little Black Boy. And, it's a black child who is talking about um, the famous black men that have made history and how that makes him feel good. That these are the possibilities that he has. He's learning and is aware of the fact that his limit is not the sky. And then the other one that I got is, well, it didn't come with a dust jacket, but it's called 101 African American Read Aloud Stories. And I read that to my son, and it's so at home he's not going to have an issue. It's just that when he goes to school, though, it's going to be a completely different story. That, and he's mixed. So explaining to white society here what fetishizing is, when I tell you I hurt feelings. And I'm not even trying to. I'm literally just stating what where the fetishizing comes from, the colorism, all of these things. Just even at the Women's March, I said that black men and white women need to analyze their privilege, and that true liberation comes from taking a step back and looking at your privilege if we're really going to bring about change. And what I meant specifically by that is, again, in the speech, I said, um, love who you love, date who you date. But you, as a black man, are with a white woman and she decides to get beside herself and speak on black issues, we have a problem. So when I went to that women's march, I did not come to play. I said all the things that needed to be said that weren't going to be said had my black ass not shown up. And the only reason why I said that is because here in Oregon, there are black men and they have white spouses. And typically, I wouldn't have an issue. It's just that when I see that they can't do their hair or they are very silent when it comes to uh, black struggle, as in, racism, kind of like when they don't want to say anything when their white family members get out of pocket and they don't say nothing. That's a problem. Date who you date, but understand that if you are not being an ally to that black man, then there's only one reason you're with that black man. That's it. And I know I get called racist a lot on here just because I'm talking about the reality of the situation. So be it. But understand this. Yeah, as I said before, my son is mixed. His father is white. And I have seen sometimes in my feed that there will be a white man and his profile photo is him and his black girlfriend. Why are you in my comment section trying to talk over me about racism? If if I was in that situation where it's me and my ex and he tries to talk over me about racism, I shut him up. At no time do you do that. I should never have to catch you talking over any black person about racism or belittling any black person's experience about racism. I should not have to see that at all, and you shouldn't be doing it. Like, that's how I know that you more than likely are with a problematic black person if you feel so comfortable on the internet to criticize black people about racism while white. That's honest to God truth. Kelly, true spirit 44, blackness, you will always feel sorry about yourself. And see, and that's the reason why black women stayed away from that white women's march. Dressing up like the handmaid's tale. That's why black women stayed away. It's because of white women that think like you. Oh, wait a minute. Dr. Schumacher Bill, you really just said that medical racism isn't real? This is exactly why black women chose to sit this one out when it came to the women's marches. It's because of shit like this. I went just so that I could tell Oregonians why black women would want to stay away. just to provide that information. What is a white classroom? It is what the name implies, a classroom full of white kids where they are learning about history from the perspective of white people. There are no white classrooms. Sir, I have been the only black person in white classrooms for years. How you going to tell me? Conceited 5540052. When they come to America, they are taught black people are no good, and that's facts. I believe it. I truly do believe it. It's like I feel like there's some type of orientation where immigrants come to America, and the first thing that they're told as soon as they get here is black people ain't shit. Keep that in mind, and you'll do fine in America. I feel like that happens. I really do. See? Yep. More and more. I'm a victim. I'm a victim. Da 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 da. Oh, ouch. Logical underscore warrior. You ain't have to do that to Dr. Schumacher Bill like that. You really said must be a northern Indian, self entitled fascist. This not making you white, honey. Is that what happened? Is that what happened? Because I understood that colorism was a global issue, and I learned that there are creams that are sold in India to make women's skin lighter so that I guess they can be candidates for jobs or something like that. Like that's what I heard, and that the same thing is going on in places like Nigeria too. So it's like at this point we're going to have to talk about this because colorism is a byproduct of white supremacy. This is why critical thinking is important. I would have to agree. Unless you decide to see past race, this problem will never go away. The problem is that we refuse to talk about it. If I don't address what the issue is, you're going to continue to do it. All she sees is race. Let me tell you something. I wasn't made aware of my blackness until I came to Oregon. Because when I was in Baltimore City, Maryland, I was a wallflower, you know? I was, I didn't stick out. There wasn't any discernible feature about me. I was just moving through the crowd like everybody else. Then when I got to Oregon, oh God. OMG, do you wash your hair? Do you know your dad? White people. Matthew F. and Scott, thank you. I can confirm that was the suburban public school experience. Exactly. Exactly. Tell me about black greatness in Oregon. Oh, I can answer that. There is a wonderful 501c3 organization called Oregon Black Pioneers. And they got a whole bunch of researchers together and they put together this book called Perseverance. Well, it says Oregon Northwest Black Pioneers. I have the book over there. And they documented black people that lived in Polk and Multnomah County. And that it was because of that book that I learned about this white pastor by the name of Obed Dickinson, who lived in the Salem area in the 1800s. And he was the only pastor that wanted to integrate his his ministry. Naturally, the white people that lived there were like, "No, we're good." And he was like, but we're all God's children." And then The white townsfolk were like, "Nah, we good on that one. We should stay separate." And so that's essentially what happened. The fact that that's the only pastor. So that's why I under I understood why it was correct for me to side eye white churches here. It's because you can't look at an entire state's history and then think the churches are going to be a safe haven while black. You just can't. That kind of hatred doesn't go away either. Like literally the sheer fact that a lot of these church members are the ones that are at these Trump rallies, that's not surprising. Just like it wasn't surprising that there was an evangelical church that donated all that money to Kyle Rittenhouse's bail. It's not surprising. Really, Dr. Schumacher Bill, you still want to play oppression Olympics. This is why black women avoided white centered marches. It's because we go through shit like this. It's like if we're talking about our experiences with racism, then y'all say victimhood or that's nothing. I've experienced worse. All this to derail the conversation and don't shit get done. This would be why black women stayed out of the march this time. Obviously not me because in Oregon the situation the opportunity has not happened yet. There wasn't a all black women's march where we're like, we're not going to take this shit anymore because Oregon was so quick to exclude black people that it didn't get a chance to happen. And so that's why Oregon is very much behind, even though the bar isn't really that high anyway, because it's not like the rest of America isn't racist. It absolutely is. Please talk about Barbary slave trade. She won't discuss the slavery trade from Africa. Actually, yes, I will. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it. Um, so I have a JSTOR account, and JSTOR is a wonderful database that has a plethora of historical documents, periodicals, the like. And so the document that I have in my hand is called Partners or Captives in Commerce: The Role of Africans in the Slave Trade. If this is something you really want to talk about, because already talked about this in my last damn live, y'all need a better playbook. It's getting old quickly. But, anyways, I'll start. So, here are some of the points that I gathered when I read this document. In Africa, servitude was what it actually was. Slaves had rights. Chattel slavery in America, on the other hand, they had no rights at all. Social organization was a ruler subject relationship in Africa. Slavery in Africa equated to serfdom and vassalship. Aside from 16th century Songhai, African slaves had no economic importance. So this had nothing to do with their economy. This slavery that you call it, even though it was serfdom, essentially. The introduction to guns upset the traditional military balance in African states. And then, on the flip side of that, slavery was the ultimate source of commercial economy of 18th century New England. The triangle trade, which involved America, Africa, and the West Indies, the northern colonies of America would send food to the West Indies. The slaves in West Indies would harvest the sugar and molasses, and then that molasses would get distilled back in the northern colonies to make rum. And then that rum was used um, as a bartering chip in Africa to get more slaves. So I'm perfectly comfortable with talking about what slavery was in America versus what it was in Africa, because there is a difference. But I assume that's not the route you were trying to go. But nice try though. It's not hard to get a JSTOR account. It's like $10 a month. Suggest you get it. Reported for what exactly? If you say so. Oh, Alan King 392. The one thing that I find interesting about you, Alan King 392, is that you went out of your way to follow someone that you say that you hate. Like for example, you're following me on TikTok. You go to every single one of my lives and spout microaggressions and the like. Why are you so obsessed with me? That's my question. Because people I don't like Taylor Swift, the Kardashians, Ben Shapiro, I don't follow them on TikTok. Um, I don't go to Twitter and see what they're doing. So why do you? Same thing with Hella Straight. Like you, like the fact that you even have that as a TikTok handle, you might be compensating for something. But do with that info what you will. Well, this is beautiful. There is a lot going on. Exactly, because they're bored, they have nothing else to do. I don't this is this is incredible. All right, so the original topic of conversation was quite literally going to a women's march while black. Why there were quite a few comments left by black women under a TikTok that I have where I said that I got called racial slurs during the live feed that we used to record the whole thing. And they're like, I thought we were staying out of that. And so honestly, I was just trying to have a conversation with black women, letting them know what kind of place I live in. I literally live in a place that is very white centered, has a history of racial hatred and the Klan and so many other things. And quite literally, we don't have a lot of black representation out here. And so that's why when I did go to the Women's March, I talked about the lack of bodily autonomy black women go through when going to the doctors. So that was the original conversation. But then that's when I got, um, some white people that got offended by what I was saying, other white people that completely understood the assignment, and black women applauding because they just understand the assignment at all times. I would, okay, Kelly True Spirit 44, analyze what you just said there for a second. Yet I would imagine what I would be faced with if I moved to her old city in Baltimore. What did you mean by that? I mean, Nancy Pelosi is from Baltimore. She made it out alive. So what would happen over there exactly? Cuz exactly. Cuz I don't think you understand. You wouldn't get your ass beat because you white. You would get your ass beat for being racist. So which is it? Cuz if you were to go to Baltimore City and then post, I don't know, some type of nonsense, say something racist, you would more than likely get what you need. The moral of the story is just don't be racist. Then move or stop complaining. Well, if white people would have picked their own cotton, harvested their own indigo, their own rum, I wouldn't even be here. African people would be in Africa. Had the trade not happened, but since it happened, this is where we are. See that sequence of events? And plus, if you want to talk about moving and putting a clown face up, why did you come to a black person's live stream? It's actually a lot more cost effective for you to leave the live stream. Just a thought. Democrats started the KKK. Okay, and the Klan now supports the Republican Party. Next.
That's what I'm saying, dude. They literally don't have any arguments. They all just have talking points. Like they all have like they all have like a list in their head.
Nancy Pelosi is from Baltimore.
Ew.
Somebody said that they were from San Francisco. That's weird.
I mean, they talk like a Democrat from San Francisco, but I didn't know that there could be a bigger state on Baltimore than that.
Kelly True Spirit 44 straight up said, "You say you moved to an all white neighborhood and found it not comfortable. You think almost getting killed by a white doctor is not comfortable? Huh?"
Oh my god, she almost ripped my vagina out. It was just such a bummer Tuesday.
Ben underscore Shapiro official underscore.
Oh
Listen,
no.
babes, you are not the troll you think you are. Find a wet pussy and be offended by it. Next. You can still go to Africa. Okay, and you can still go to hell. Okay, here's what I want to know. Why is it that white people think that they set the standard for what is and what isn't racism when people of color, and especially black people, talk about their experiences? That's what I want to know. Because if racism is meant to disenfranchise people of color and black people, why are white people saying, no, that's not racism? I feel like if I'm going to learn about the kind of racism that people of Asian descent go through, I'm not going to talk to a white person about that. I'm going to ask a person of Asian descent about it because that is their experience. It's like you wouldn't ask a tiger how to be a dog. All you have is talking points. I have books too, but I don't think you read.
And plus, weird projection, buddy. Because they're the ones who literally say, like, one of the same seven things. Venezuela! You don't like it, just leave it. No iPhone!
You blame it on a doctor being white? No, I blame it on the history of white people saying that black skin cannot experience pain. I blame it on the history of white academia deeming black people inferior. There is a history behind this, and it still affects black people to this day. The fact that you don't know or care doesn't change the fact that it's happening. That's why no one is asking you your opinion on what is and what isn't racist towards black people. Nobody asked you. Why do you live in a white neighborhood? Why is there a white neighborhood? Africa doesn't have the freedom we do. I mean, I will say this: European countries can't mind their business, so that's why Africa is a continent that is still being robbed. But I'm not in Africa. I'm in America. So can we focus on what's going on here before we check everybody else's inventory? That's what my grandfather used to tell me. Check your own inventory. And so that's what America needs to do. Before America starts talking shit about all these other, countries and continents, look in your closet because you're bound to find some skeletons, mass graves, even. A lot of white people think they're entitled. I agree. I will agree with that statement because like that's what I've seen. And one of the important takeaways that I have from the experience of going to a women's march while black is simply this, is that the white woman that put it together, she wanted more people of color and, black people to have their voices heard when talking about bodily autonomy because she understood, the history behind Oregon. And after she gave her speech, um, before we started marching, she said that, we have to show that Black Lives Matter. So after that, then I started giving my speech on things that are not taught in American classrooms that are predominantly white, and how if you want to be an ally, you need to change that. If you learn something new here at this protest today, you need to assess why are you just now learning about it. I if I were you, I would have to you would have to go back and look at the definition of racism because I swear black people cannot be racist towards white people. We would have to develop a system that specifically targets you, only you, and disenfranchises you. But black people have not done that. One of the knee jerk reactions to me going live and talking about literally anything is a white guy coming up into my stream, and one of his comments is BLM Antifa loot and murder and yee yee. And I'm like, the topic of conversation could be about bunnies, and they will post some shit like that. And then they like to bring that up as if they're really doing something, but they're very silent when we're talking about the literal bombings of black neighborhoods, how gentrifiers will build entire highways through black neighborhoods, redlining. We wasn't worried about property damage then. I could learn more from Dr. Seuss than a book by you. Okay. If you can't read above a fourth grade level, just say that.
Fourth grade? You giving him too much credit there, Dom. Do you think he knows what four is? That's like two. That's like two numbers too high.
It's history. Do you really think the same people are around today? No, those people had kids. Alan King 392 just straight up said, "I'm a Seminole, Indiana."
That's a fact.
I'm a Seminole, Indiana. Babes, if you're trying to say you're native, I would like for you to address the anti-blackness within your circles too. Believe it or not, when white people like to bring up, but Native Americans owned slaves, then I instinctively go, who told them to participate in the slave trade? That would be white people. And y'all still took the land. You still mass genocided these people. That doesn't automatically like absolve you from the racist history that America has. Black people are not going to blame the entirety of the slave trade on indigenous folks. We readily recognize that their land was still taken. They are still victims of white supremacy. Their cultures were stripped from them. That's not, and I still recognize that because of that history, because of their participation in the slave trade. And it was only 5 tribes that did this anyway. I recognize that that would be why there's anti blackness within that community as well. That would be the history behind it. I also, actually, now that I think about it, I'm on the So Equity website right now. I could just bring up the damn blog. So let me bring it up. Because I was tired of white people using that as an excuse, saying that, but Native Americans own slaves. So then at that point, I wrote a blog post about it. If this is the trade that you're talking about, I need you to understand something. It's called Enslaved Amongst Natives. And one of the, let me see, where's the book? I don't think I have the book over here because I have like a pile of books right here that I keep next to me. Oh, yes, I do. Black Slaves, Indian Masters. This is a book that is about the slave trade in America and how natives came to be a part of it. But make no mistake, white people played the biggest part in this. Why white people feel the need to blame Native Americans for the slave trade, I'll never know. But here we go. So this is directly from the blog, and this book was one of the sources that I used in order to give people the correct information, or at least one of the sources anyway. When a person says statements such as slavery has existed everywhere around the world, that's just another form of gaslighting to justify the extent of white supremacy. Gaslighting goes farther than an abusive partner for black people in America because oppression is America's template. As a black woman in America, I'm tired of the praise of bigotry while my plight is a footnote in today's textbooks. It comes in the form of the white passing native that refuses to acknowledge colorism when laws against intermarriage between the indigenous population and black people existed. I am fed up with hearing this stuff happen so long ago when a 2006 University of Georgia study showed that employers prefer light-skinned black men to dark-skinned black men regardless of their qualifications. What happened in 1776 was not the birth of a nation, but a deadly dance with the devil. The irony is that the devil came bearing a cross with intentions to erase the cultural beliefs of indigenous people and call it an act of justice. The Choctaw leaders would write letters to the Reverend of Worcester, conveying a false sense of approval of the mission schools in their western district, in hopes that it would deflect a potential land grab. In the June 4th, 1820 edition of the Missionary Herald, the leaders said that Choctaw girls would learn to sew and cook like white women, while black women were defeminized and viewed as naturally inferior, thus being subjected to exploitation. In 1825, the letters from the American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions reflected how the missionaries were swindlers and the Choctaw boys were forced to work in the fields in the same manner that Negroes were. The missionaries were misappropriating the funds and supplies of the native populace, according to Robert Cole, who called them cheats and liars. Just as it plagues Africa today, painting Christianity as the standard for being civilized plagued the indigenous people on their land as well. It was Thomas Jefferson that said, "You will unite yourselves with us, and we shall all be Americans. You will mix with us by marriage. Your blood will run in our veins." These assimilationists believed that intermarriage would hasten the natives' advancement into civilization. So when in the history of this country have all lives mattered if non-Christian cultures do not? Why should I call myself African American if being American was never supposed to include me? So there you have it. You must have nothing better to do. Otherwise, like, why would you even be here? Kelly True Spirit 44. You say, my black dress hurts me during my hysterectomy. I guess that's not racism. Like, what was that supposed to do exactly? I swear. John F. Kennedy 25. Well, how do we fix it? Because of past comments that you've left, I don't think you truly want to know the answer to that. I feel like that's fair to say. Speak hate and racism and misinformation. How am I speaking misinformation when I'm sitting next to a pile of books that have the same information?
Do you think they can read?
If you say so. White people quite literally could not experience racism. End of story. Are you a part of Antifa? Are you a part of fascism? No, I don't think someone can't be racist. I specifically said white people. I agree. Racism is definitely a public health issue. Hence the reason why I went to the Women's March while black and I said what needed to be said. LOL, I'm Native American. LOL. Oh, honey. Okay. It's not soul equity, it's so equity. I live in Southern Oregon, hence the reason that there is an SO. I mean, if you're going to insult me, do it correctly. It's called soequity.org. And honestly, on every single blog post that I write, I also include references where I got the information from. So if a person wanted to go on here and say, "Wait a minute, that's not correct. Where did she get this information from?" Then they could go down to the reference list and look at the books that I got the info from. And if they take it upon themselves to go and read these books for themselves, well then I would have successfully done my job because that was the point. A blog is an opinion if you make it an opinion. I mean, think about it. The the way that blogs work, you can have a history blog. There are historical blogs. And the point of writing, see, if I wanted to write a blog specifically to write my opinion, I would not leave references. I would just say my opinion. There is a book for every agenda. I can pick and choose topics that agree with me. Like what? Mein Kampf? Obviously, you shouldn't read that book, but people like you still do. But in any case, these are. Books written by people with PhDs. What agenda would a person with a PhD have in history other than to talk about it? I'm curious as to which authors do you think are the correct ones? Because as I've said before, if we're talking about black history, we need to look at black authors. If we're talking about indigenous history and culture, well, then we need to be learning from indigenous authors. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? You're fueling the problem, not helping it. Yes, because of course, you as a white person would know what people of color and black people need to do in order to solve the problem. I'm sure. You want answer the simple question, what do white people do to fix history? They don't tell it. They give their opinion. That's that's kind of why we're here. See, you choose your books to fit your narrative. These people have degrees in history. What narrative?
Dumb, dumb, dumb. You are forgetting these are the same people who say that people who studied medicine for 20 years are lying about a vaccine, and they also said people who've been studying the weather for 20 years are lying about global warming. They don't care about any actual, facts that you have.
Mm. It's like I will say that yes, propaganda does exist. It's just that you have to discern from what is actually truth and what is propagandized. I would imagine that it would make you feel uncomfortable if you read a book that talked about the topic of indigenous culture and it's from an indigenous person because it makes your whiteness feel uncomfortable. If it was written by a white person, you would be all ears. Is that what I'm understanding? Exactly. I love it when racist doctors out themselves too. It's amazing. It's incredible. Makes my job easier. You're breeding hate and division today for the bad in history. Dude, hate and division was here before I got here. I'm just pointing it out. This is this is mind-boggling, really. The fact that y'all are willing to argue, of course, white people experience racism before learning about black people's experience with racism. I feel like that's the most telling part about this entire thing. Think about it. This entire live stream was about me going to a women's march that was organized by a white person while black, and how black women were saying, why did you go to that? And then me getting onto this live stream and explaining why I went. The racist comments that I'm seeing are the reason I went. The lack of information about black women's bodily autonomy, that's the reason I went. I swear, I'm going to be employed for a very long time with how racist Oregon is. Oh, la di da. Oh, it's not that I can't tell you how you can fix it. It's just that I know that you don't want to fix it. Because otherwise, why would you be saying microaggressive comments in a black person's live stream? Clearly, you don't want to fix the issue. If I were to give you the solution to how we can fix these problems, you would then um, downplay it. You would then gaslight, and you would get more microaggressive about the entire thing. Even though I don't necessarily like bringing up um, Robin DiAngelo's uh, book, where she's quite literally outlining what microaggressions even are. Here's the important takeaway that I got from that book to begin with. There's this chapter called White Women's Tears, and in it, it talks about um, essentially what white women and white men do when they are confronted about a microaggression they just did. And the interesting thing that she said about white men is that instead of crying like white women would do in order to manipulate or overpower the situation, they will instead speak first, last, and most often. Um, they will gaslight, they will be condescending, they will say statements like, well, see, what we need to do about, or it's not about racism, it's about class. Y'all do that shit. Like verbatim. It's like I could take out the book right now, open it up, and then go through the comments, and then I can find each one of those statements in the book. That's how pegged Robin DiAngelo has white men. Um, One of the issues that some black TikTok creators discussed when talking about Robin DiAngelo was this, is that first of all, a white woman is profiting off of talking about racism. We've been doing that forever. That's the first thing. Secondly, why do you call it white fragility? There's nothing fragile about refusing or being uncomfortable with racism, especially when your microaggression gets pointed out. Remember when that black woman was at Victoria's Secret, and this situation was all over TikTok. Black woman, she's at Victoria's Secret. Next thing I know, in the video, she's getting chased around the store by a white woman. That's not fragile. That's aggression. That's aggressive. Do you see how that's aggressive? You are chasing a black woman through the store. Then when the cops show up, this white woman, she blows a full-on tantrum, then goes to the cops and says, this black woman did this, that, and the third. No one checked to see if the black woman was okay. And had that black woman not been recording, nobody would have believed her. Except, of course, black people. Because we know this shit happens. I will forever love the fact that Will Smith said racism is being recorded. It's being recorded. I just, I really want people to understand that unfortunately in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, we didn't carry around a portable camera to record the racism happening. But now we live in a time where we can, and we do. And the fact that we do it, and white people will still say, well, that's not racist. That is a wake up call, is that you will see it broadcasted on television and you will still say that's not racism. The fact that the first name that you said was Thomas Sowell and then had the nerve to tell me that I'm the one that's misinformed. Thomas Sowell was the biggest black Reaganite, have several seats. What are you getting at? Like, what's the solution? The solution would be to start telling the truth. If I had to put it simply, even though this is a multifaceted issue, obviously, the first step would be to just tell the truth. And it's just that black people still aren't being believed. We're being called victims, even though we are constantly recording racism just by existing. Just by existing, we carry around our phones and then we simply record what happens to us on a regular basis. And white people will still find a way to diminish the situation, to try to make a molehill out of a literal mountain range, even. No, who, LMAO, who the fuck talking about Sowell? No bullshit. If you scroll up a few in the comment section, somebody brought that up. They said that they read Thomas Sowell and Malcolm X in the same sentence. Same sentence. And I'm like, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. One of these things is not like the other. What's going on here? I just joined. Hi. Okay, so here's a rundown of what happened. I just went on here because I noticed that one of my TikToks were getting kind of um s- some some levels of attention. It was the TikTok where I talk about the fact that I went to a women's march and I live in Southern Oregon. It's very white, and I went to a women's march while black. And black women were in the comment section saying, "Sis, why did you go to that?" That was the bulk of the comments. And so I felt it necessary to get on live and talk about the climate here in Southern Oregon, the sundown towns, the black exclusionary laws, the audacity, all of the things, right? So I told them, or in response to the comments that I see, I understand why there are a plethora of black women that are like, you know what? No, we're going to sit this one out because quite a few of them live in states where there is a sizable black population. I don't. I live in Oregon. There is maybe 10 in Medford, 10 black folks. Um, so when I went to this women's march, if I didn't say something about the black experience here in America, it would have never gotten talked about. That's the thing. So, as much as I understand why other black women that live in other parts of America wanted to sit the Women's March out, I just felt that I needed to speak up because I know that there is very little exposure to black history out here. And that if I want that to change, I have to speak up and say something. A closed mouth don't get fed. Amen. I have never seen anyone quoted more by white supremacists than Thomas Sowell. Exactly. B underscore rabbit 8003. It's a women's march. It's not about race. And that's the problem. That's why black women stayed away from the women's march, is because people will say shit like that. And I really wish you knew the history behind it too. That's why I went to the march and said the things. I said the things that needed to be said. White women suffragists, when they were fighting for the right to vote, they didn't center race either. They had racist slogans and everything. They told Ida B. Wells to march in the back of the line. That's why black women wanted to stay away. Because you won't center race in any conversation and wonder why we have a problem. That's why I went and said something. Ben V764. Do you live in Oregon? Did you really ask me what black exclusionary laws in Oregon? Can you name one? Did you ask me that? Did you really? Wow. If you don't live in Oregon, just don't even worry about it. Just things are Googleable. What do you mean, in my opinion? There's opinion and then there's fact. Saying that Oregon is racist, that's not an opinion. That is a straight up fact. Grants Pass, Oregon, for example. This is the part of Southern Oregon history that I really want y'all to understand. Grants Pass, Oregon is a documented sundown town. There is a sign that hangs overhead in downtown Grants Pass and it says it's the climate. Do you want to know the meaning behind that sign? The meaning behind the it's the climate sign in Oregon has roots to the Klan. They wanted Grants Pass to remain a white safe haven. They wanted to keep Oregon white. That's the history behind the sign. So it's not an opinion to say that Oregon is racist. It's very documented that it is. You just choose not to read that shit. Do you live in that time period, the time period of racism? Yes, I woke up this morning, racism is still here. Yes, I still live in this time period where racism didn't go anywhere. What was the point? Is it safe then to live in your town while being black because so many white people? Honestly, here's the thing. Um I'm going to go with no. It's not. It's not safe. I would be lying to you if I said that it was safe to live here while black. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I feel like America does that enough. So in Ashland, Oregon, a boy by the name of Aiden Ellison was murdered at the Stratford Inn in one of Oregon's so-called liberal towns. Here in Southern Oregon, Ashland, Oregon is supposed to be this white liberal safe haven. They're supposed to be, all inclusive, rainbow flags, all of the things, all of the things. But see, the unfortunate part about Ashland is that it also had a very large Klan presence. Ashland, Oregon is still a part of Oregon, no matter how many rednecks want to say otherwise. That's just the way that it is. And it was in Ashland that Aiden Ellison was murdered by a white guy because the white man felt that Aiden was blasting his music too damn high. And the very first thing that the news outlets here, the local ones here, did was a fire victim or the a victim of a fire just shot someone. You didn't need to bring that up. Like, you're automatically trying to win sympathy points for a white man that just murdered somebody's child. Because of that, because of white male rage, Aiden Ellison will never see the age of 21. So, is it safe while black to live in Southern Oregon? I'm going to go with no. And that's not the only case either. The only incident of a black man being murdered here, that's not the only one. Googleable. Love it. I love that you're here because I absolutely love your TikToks. And of course, I'm talking to, I don't know how to pronounce this, AIOFE714. I just love you so much, and I am your biggest fan. And I would like to take this point. I hope you're still watching. Um, you mentioned that your son has autism. And so that's another thing that I wanted to bring up. Living in a predominantly white area, and I have a biracial child, and the fact that I have to have these conversations with his white grandmother and say, I don't feel comfortable taking my son to white specialists because I know what they do to black and brown kids. I had to have that conversation. And I know there are going to be a lot of white people that say, see, that's racist. Just because the provider is white, they don't get it. And the only reason why I bring it up is because my son is very smart. Um, One of the things that I noticed that happened, this happened when he was like 1.5. I took him to early childhood development um, because his pediatrician of the time said that I should. So I take him there, and they tell me after what they, watched him do, that he needs their services. I watched my 1.5-year-old walk around the room and unchildproof all of the things that were previously childproof. And then when he got to the only exit that had one of those doorknob covers on it, he took it off. I didn't know he could do that because I don't have those kinds of knobs at my house, but he took it off and then put his hand on the bare knob itself and said, go bye bye. So obviously he wasn't feeling it with these white women trying to get him to do tricks. And so he wanted to leave. So they try to say that he needs their services. And I'm like, I just witnessed my son just say he doesn't even want to be here. I'm gonna listen to what he had to say.
This boy's smarter than your doctors.
But that's just it though, is that I don't believe in medication unless it's like absolutely necessary. And I will say this about my child is that he throws some top tier tantrums because he ripped the closet door off its hinges. And I'm like, I didn't even know you could do that. And I just want to know, would he be on the spectrum or does he have ADHD or something like that? Because I don't have a provider that is of color that can have the us conversation with me. So that's just one of the struggles that I have um, as a black mom trying to raise her child in a very white area. Hmm. Word. Is it that bad as it was back then? Yes. Yes. Racism doesn't get better over time. No, it just transforms to fit that generation. Case in point, I was at the park with my son. Innocent story, right? White girl, her son, probably around the same age as my son. They're playing or whatever. Unprovoked, she starts talking about the fact that she lives in Gold Hill. You don't have to tell me that Gold Hill doesn't have a lot of black people. I automatically knew as soon as you said Gold Hill, we're in Oregon. No shit. But anyways, so she starts talking about the fact that Gold Hill didn't have a lot of black people, and then proceeded to say that she didn't care if I was colored. Now, number one, never call a black person colored. Um, but that's how backward Oregon is. They will straight up call you colored. I I have no words. Um, it's like they're stuck in a time bubble. Play victim, race hustler. Now, So apparently, black people is hustling racism. I had no idea. White people be like, I didn't lynch anyone today, so racism must not exist. It's so yes. I feel like they think that way. I did not call anyone the N word today. Racism is does not exist. Oh my God. Why live in a town where you're so afraid? You think that this level of racial hatred exists in one area? Are you new to America? Literally, white people. Where's the racism? My neighbor is black and we help each other all the time. Racism does not exist. World hunger does not exist. I had a sandwich today. That's what you sound like. And that's just it. They will then go, what kind of racism have you personally experienced? They don't say that with concern, genuinely wanting to know what that looks like. No, they say that to disprove it and say, what? That's not racism. Everyone goes through it. Not just you. We're all one people. We are the world. They really be saying that. Thinking they doing something. It's like, I'm sorry, but white neighborhoods was not getting bombed to pieces. It was prominent black neighborhoods that were. The Philadelphia move group. I was yesterday years old when I learned about that. And that's why I was so disappointed when the rapper Eve said that, you know, her and her boo um don't see color. That has always rubbed me the wrong way. And this is a conversation that I'm now just having with black people. I don't care what white people have to say about this. When Eve said that, I was like, did the Rough Riders first lady just now say that she doesn't see color? That's the first thought that went through my mind. You're from Philly. Just having to reflect on that, it's like we truly are not a monolith. I will say that. Why she talk like a white Karen? I wish I had white Karen privileges.
I still remember you coming home from work back when you worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield and us making jokes about you having to do the the white woman voice. And just doing jokes about that for fucking hours.
We are all the same. We bleed the same. Why the hate? I feel like that's something you need to ask white people. Why the hate? Well, it's because a bunch of white scientists got together and started to classify humans by race. And they were the ones that determined what's white, what's black, all of the things. And we still base our society off of that today. So if you wanted to know why the hate, you needn't look further than white race scientists and then America's history after that. There is way more black on black crime. Dude, there is no black on black crime. There is crime by proximity. But if we're going to go that route, then both world wars were white on white crime. Cry about it. What do you mean I would lose money if I said that Oregon was safe? Do you think that black people are paying me to do this? No. Rage in anyone is dangerous. Let's not blame it on their skin. It's such a white person thing to say. Nothing you say is valid because I said it's not. I swear, the way that um the pet Negro system works, because Zora Neale Hurston did talk about this. The way that it works is this: you will have 51 black people in a space. 50 black people are saying that they experience racism. And then there's the one black person that says, what, racism doesn't exist. And then white people will cling to the one black person that said that they don't experience racism, despite the fact that 50 other black people are saying the exact same thing. That's how it works. That's a very microaggressive thing to say. So you assume that if a black person is from the hood, they can't speak eloquently. Do I even need to say how that's anti black as fuck? Like, do I need to say it? I mean, I'm from Baltimore City, Maryland. More specifically, I'm from West Baltimore. That classifies as the hood. And yes, black people are able to speak eloquently no matter where we're from. Um, Self assess is what I would recommend. She grew up next to Martha Stewart. I didn't know Martha Stewart lived in Baltimore. When that happened? Why keep the divide? The divide was here way before I was born. The fact that when black people point out race